Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Basic Education Board.
Hello students, you're welcome to the TV learning programs. I'm Teacher Herbert as usual, and I will be taking you through again in biology of the year 3. We are still on the same unit, which is concerning about the circulatory system in humans. I think student, the last lesson, which was lesson 3, we discussed about blood vessels. And I think everybody still reminds himself or herself about types of blood vessels. We talked about the arteries, we talked about capillaries, and veins. And we talked about their functions and even their adaptations. So before we start our lesson, I would like to remind you to take a notebook, a pen, and you start noting something which is important in the lesson we're going to discuss today. So as we are reminding ourselves on the previous lesson, we talked about arteries, capillaries, and veins. If you remember properly how we've been drawing let me try to draw the diagram. We try to draw the diagram like that. And we drew the diagram of arteries, capillaries, and veins. And we said, if you try to remind ourselves before we start our lesson, all right? And then we had something another on that side, which is also drawn like that. I think everybody still remember what I'm trying to draw, and we try to see how they differ in terms. We had something like that, and between here we had the structure, which is trying to show the structure of the heart, which is in the middle. As you're trying to see, we had something like that, and which is very interesting to remind ourselves of what we studied last time. So if you have that diagram, you can try to observe and see. That diagram is trying to see, this one has got a small lumen, this one has got a large lumen. So we say that one with a small lumen is an artery, this one is artery, and that one with a small lumen is the vein. And that one which connects the two, as you can try to observe clearly, this one is, these are capillaries. So that is the diagram, and this is the heart. This is the heart, and we said arteries, they carry blood away from the heart. So the blood must be coming from here, coming this way, coming this way. So this is the blood, and we said this one, the blood must be oxygenated. Carries blood, and this one shows that blood is oxygenated. So that one carries blood back to the heart. So we have that diagram, we have that diagram. So these are the oxygenated blood, and the oxygenated blood, and this side, this one carries oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood. So simply, we are reminding ourselves of what we discussed in the previous lesson. So that one is an artery, this is a vein, this is a capillary. So that is what we discussed last lesson, the last lesson. So today, we are going to discuss about components of blood. Students, I would like to ask you what are the major components of blood. I know some of you know what are the major components of blood and what is blood itself. If we talk about the blood, this is the objective. We have to compare the components of blood smear, and we try to talk about its components. And we have to understand what is blood itself. What do you understand by blood? So in a short time, you have to think about it, and we also have to react and know what is blood. Blood itself is a body fluid which transports materials in mammals. So in mammals, the blood is the one that transports materials. If you talk about materials, the blood transports oxygen, the blood transports nutrients, and it is a liquid tissue that contains a suspended substances as well as dissolved substances. So it contains a suspended substance, it contains a dissolved substance, so the blood is a fluid which transports materials in mammals. If you talk about mammals, we talk about in human, the blood is the one that transports materials. If you talk about in animals, they must be having what we call transport system, which is the transport system, human transport system. It means we're talking about circulatory system. So as I mentioned it earlier, that the blood, the blood is a body fluid which transports materials in mammals. It is a liquid tissue that contains a suspended substances as well as dissolved substances. It contains suspended substances. It also contains dissolved substances. Blood has three major functions. Let's think about what are the major functions of blood. One of the functions of blood, it is a medium of transport of material to and from other tissues. So a medium of transport of materials to and from tissues, from cells, these are normally done by the blood. So a medium of transport of materials to and from other tissues is normally done by the blood. All right? Another function of blood is a regulation of body temperature and materials in the body. A regulation of very many materials are normally done by the blood. Another function of blood, it protects against disease germs. Disease germs, these are disease-causing agents. So the blood is also playing a very important role in preventing our body against pathogens. If I mention about pathogen, I mean microorganisms, bacteria, fungi that can cause disease to our body. So the blood is very important in protecting against disease germs or disease-causing agent. Pathogens, microorganisms are normally helped by the blood. So let us go through, as I was mentioning, a medium of transport of material, I mentioned it, and to and from tissues. Second, regulation of temperature and other materials in the body. If you talk about not only temperature, regulation of glucose in the blood is also carried by the blood. Regulation of other substances and materials are normally done by the blood. So what are the major components? What are the composition of blood, student? I would like to give you a small time, and you refresh yourself, so able to tell me what are the major components of blood. And particularly, I'm talking about the mammalian blood. What are the major components of mammalian blood? So the mammalian blood is composed of several components. And these several components are suspended in a pale yellow watery medium known as what we call plasma. Pale yellow watery medium that is found in our body is referred to as plasma. Our body, student, our body is made up of plasma because plasma automatically it is almost 90% of blood is plasma. The remaining 10%, we're going to discuss it. It is white blood cells, red blood cells, and even platelets. And all of these three components, they play different functions. I mentioned the cellular components of blood are blood cells and platelets. If I talk about blood cells, I mean red blood cells. I talk about white blood cells. There are two types of blood cells. We have red blood cells, RBC. We have WBC, which is white blood cells, which are known as, and they have other names. If you talk about red blood cells, in biology can also be referred as erythrocytes. White blood cells are called leukocytes. So these are blood cells and even the platelets. I said, let us go through. The mammalian blood is composed of several components and suspended in a pale. They are suspended in a pale yellow watery medium known as the plasma. The cellular components of blood are the blood cells and platelets. There are two types of blood cells. We have talked about red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes, and white blood cells, also known as leukocytes. So we have three components of blood. We have the plasma. In the plasma, which is a pale yellow watery, where we have blood cells, which are red blood cells and white blood cells, without forgetting the platelets. Let's start with the plasma. Plasma makes up about 50% of the total volume of the blood. It means that the total volume of blood is 55% is made up of what you call the blood plasma. What is remaining is 45%. The 45% of blood is made up of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. I think you are following me very well. I'm mentioning and saying that the plasma is made up of 50% of the total volume of the blood. So the total volume of the blood, the total volume of blood, 55% is blood plasma, and the 45% remaining, we have RBCs, which are red blood cells. We have WBCs, which are white blood cells, and also the platelets. So that is 45%. I mentioned that the blood plasma is a clear and pale yellow, as I mentioned it before. It is clear and pale yellow in color when separated from the cellular parts of the blood. When you separate it from the cellular by using what you call centrifugation, a centrifuge, the blood can just be separated in that way. Now we can be able to identify that the pale yellow present is the blood plasma. 90% of the blood plasma is made up of water. And as I mentioned it, the remaining 10% is consisting of a variety of substances that are dissolved in water. What are those variety substances that are dissolved in water? We're going to discuss them. These substances that are dissolved in plasma there are a number of them, include number one, food substance. What are those food substances I'm telling you? We have the glucose, we have amino acids, without forgetting the fatty acids. We have vitamins and mineral salts from digestion. These vitamins and mineral salts are both from digestion. And the main salts are in form of ions. We have sodium chloride, we have hydrogen carbonate ions. These are some of the mineral salts that are normally found in a digested food substance. And again in plasma, we have what we call waste substances. These waste substances can also be found in the blood plasma. We include the carbon dioxide and even the urea, which is a nitrogenous waste product that has to be removed from the body. The last one, in the blood plasma, we also have hormones. And when we talk about hormones, everybody is able to understand what are hormones, students. Hormones are chemical messengers. And they are secreted by endocrine glands. And once they're secreted, they normally go to the target organ to cause an effect. So the blood plasma is composed of food substances, vitamin and mineral salts, waste substances, as well as the hormones. Let's go through, I think we mentioned each and everything. What are these mineral salts? Talked about sodium chloride. We talked about sodium carbonate ions. And in examples of hormones, we have adrenaline hormone and even the insulin. I think everybody remember where we talked what are the functions of insulin. We said insulin is produced by the pancreas. And once it is produced by the pancreas, its function is to regulate blood glucose or sugar in the blood. Once the glucose is very high, the insulin is able to lower down the glucose level to become on a normal level. So we have the insulin and adrenaline hormone and others that are normally found in blood plasma. Let's talk about the function of blood plasma. The blood plasma has very many functions, and we're going to go through what are those functions. The blood plasma transports substances dissolved in it from one part of the body to another part of the body. So the blood plasma is able to transport these dissolved substances from one part of the body to another part of the body. Second, transportation of carbon dioxide is also done by the blood plasma. So carbon dioxide formed from the reactions that releases energy in cells. Carbon dioxide can be toxic to the cells if it is in high concentration. So it needs to be removed before it accumulates. So transport of carbon dioxide is also done by the blood plasma. And we can mention that 5 to 10% of carbon dioxide from the tissue is transported as a carbonic acid. And that carbonic acid, the water in the plasma acts as a solvent. That's where the carbon dioxide can dissolve. Let's have the equation. You get carbon dioxide plus water, and then you get carbonic acid. And that must be transportation of carbon dioxide is also done by the blood plasma. Second, transportation of waste substances, because if there is more waste substances, these end product of metabolic wastes in the body, such as urea, carbon dioxide, and even urine, are transported in various excretory organs for elimination, to be eliminated from the body. So transportation of waste substances is also done by the blood plasma. We have transport of heat. As I mentioned it, transportation of heat to different body parts is also done by the blood plasma. Transport of heat by the blood helps in the distribution it evenly within the body tissues. Within the body tissues, the distribution of heat is normally done by the blood plasma. Most heat originates from organ like the liver, in which many heat-producing chemical reactions occur. We have another one, transport of hormones. Hormones to be distributed, to be secreted and go to the target organs, they must be helped by the blood plasma. Blood plasma serves as a medium in which hormones are transported from the glands that secretes those hormones that produce them to specific target organs on which they will act. So transport of hormones from the glands that produces them to the target organs is normally helped by the blood plasma. Transport of antibodies. Antibodies, they are used to defend against diseases. These antibodies are chemical substances that protect the body from disease-causing agents. Take an example, like microorganisms. They transport it in plasma. So transport of antibodies are also helped by the blood plasma. Transport of nutrients, which is 6. Many of the products of digestion, such as once the food is being digested and broken down, nutrients has to be distributed to different body cells so that they can just be used, they can use them for them to survive. So many of the products of digestion, such as glucose, amino acids, are dissolved in plasma before they are transported from small intestine to the liver, either for storage or for further transport to the cells for body organs. That one is also helped by the blood plasma. So that we've been discussing about the functions of blood plasma. Now, we're going to talk about the components of blood. We are finished about blood plasma. Let's talk about now red blood cells. Red blood cells are sometimes called erythrocytes. They are very tiny cells. They are disc-shaped or biconcave. And they appear as a disc. You talk about the disc, they are biconcave in disc. As you can try to see the diagram, we have the diagram. These are the structure of the red blood cells. And actually, the red blood cells are small in size. And increase, why do you have to be small in size? They are small in size purposely to increase the surface area to the volume ratio. As there is, the volume is, the smaller area to the volume ratio is very high, the rate of diffusion increases. We've been discussing it, some of the factors that facilitate the diffusion take place. So the cytoplasm contains red iron containing pigment called hemoglobin. So iron is composed of hemoglobin. Red blood cells have no nucleus. And however, the number of red blood cells varies depending to any of the following. So the number of red blood cells varies to individuals to individuals. That is, people who are living in high altitude are having more number of red blood cells compared to the people who are living in low altitude. People who are healthy, they have more red blood cells compared to a person who is sick or a person who is unhealthy. So let us go through these processes. Altitudes, higher the altitude, more there will be, more red blood cells a person will possess. So people are living, take an example, in areas like Ruhengeri and in a mountainous area. They have a high number of red blood cells because they need more red blood cells to load in more oxygen. Because the higher you go, the more oxygen you need. The state of the health of a person, people with a severe anemia or malaria have much fewer red blood cells in their body. People who are suffering from malaria, people are suffering from anemia, they have less number of red blood cells because they have busted. And once they bust, because of plasmodium, a parasite, automatically the number of red blood cells has to decrease. Red blood cells are made in red. Where are they made? Where do we find, which part of the body is responsible for making red blood cells? It is the bone marrows that is responsible to make the red blood cells, and even in the sternum. We talk about the sternum and even the ribs, they're the one that makes red blood cells. Function of red blood cells. One of the main functions of red blood cells is to transport oxygen from the lungs to the body tissues. You get me very well? Transport of oxygen from the lungs to the body tissues. The hemoglobin found in these cells radially combine with oxygen. When they combine, they form what we call oxohemoglobin. Combination of hemoglobin with oxygen are referred to as oxohemoglobin. The cells that take up oxygen and are combined with hemoglobin to be free again, carrying it more oxygen. As I mentioned it, we have hemoglobin plus oxygen in the tissue, get what we call oxohemoglobin. So red blood cells also plays an important role in the transport of carbon dioxide. So transport of carbon dioxide from the body is also done by red blood cells. Most of the carbon dioxide, as you know it, as I mentioned it, most of the carbon dioxide from the tissue enters the red blood cells, where an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase speeds up the dissolving of carbon dioxide from carbonic acid. Let's talk about white blood cells. The white blood cells are large than the red blood cells. They are quite different from that one. They seem to be somehow large than the red blood cells. So we have talked about, there are about 600 white blood cells. We have 6,000 that are found in each cell per square kilometer of blood. We have almost 6,000 white blood cells. A number of increases during the infection, but reduces when a person is suffering from HIV. When a person is sick, the number of white blood cells decreases. But when a person is healthy, the number of red blood cells must be in each per centimeter cubed of blood must be having what you call 600 of white blood cells. So let's talk about the types of white blood cells. There are two main types of white blood cells. We have lymphocytes and phagocytes. Let's also try to see their diagram. This one is a phagocyte. And another one that we have here is a lymphocyte. We have other types of white blood cells. We have neutrophils, we have basophils, and we have monocytes. Let us go through all these, how they normally do. We start with the phagocytes. Phagocytes, it protects the body, defends the body against pathogen or any disease-causing agent. And how does it do it? It does it by means of engulfing and surrounding. Any microorganism, after engulfing, that microorganism is weakened, and now you are able to be free from the disease. Phagocytes are in bone marrows of long bones, and they have large lobed nucleus and cytoplasm, as you can see in the diagram. These are, and we have, as you can try to see, And they are responsible to protect the body against the disease by means of engulfing and surrounding. We have lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are large rounded nucleus, and their cytoplasm also, they have no granular. We have neutrophils. These lymphocytes, they defend the body by producing what we call antibodies. And when the body produces antigen, now the antibodies are going to be produced, they are going to be stimulated to produce antigens. Once antigens are produced, they stimulate the production of antibodies. And eventually, the antibodies are able to defend the body against the disease-causing agent. So we talked about phagocytes, which involve surrounding and weakening the disease. We have lymphocytes, which produces antigen, and once antigens are produced, they stimulate the body to produce antibodies. And antibodies, because antibodies, they are compatible with antigens, they are able to detect any antigen, and they're able to defend the body by weakening the foreign substance that has entered in the body by producing antigens. And after recognizing that one, it is able to defend the body against the disease. We have neutrophils. Neutrophils are the most common type of white blood cells, and neutrophils are medium-sized white blood cells. We have blood cells with regular nuclei, and the monocytes are also a type of white blood cells, as I mentioned it earlier. Let's talk about the eosinophils, also the same type of white blood cells. Let's talk about the platelets. Platelets has no nucleus. Blood platelets are also known as thrombocytes. Talk about thrombocytes. These are fragments from large cells. And they are very small and even has no nucleus. One of the functions of these platelets, they are very important in helping the blood to clot. Once a person gets injured, once a person gets damage, and the platelets are the one to be able to defend the body by causing the blood to clot. So platelets, they are responsible for blood clotting simply. Blood to clot, when a person has less number of platelets, he or she will bleed to death. So it means the platelets plays an important role as far as blood clotting is concerned. So we have the table. You can go through the table of comparison between red blood cells. We have discussed it, comparison between red blood cells and white blood cells. One irregular, one concave, plays a role in transportation of oxygen. Another one is responsible for defending the body against diseases. Another one is normally produced in bone marrows. Another one is normally produced also in bone marrows. They are responsible for blood clotting platelets. These ones are responsible for defending the body or destroying any bacteria or engulfing them. So that is the lesson. And this is lesson assessment. We go through it. See you next time.